now that we've, okay. So letting those know that are just coming on with the recording, as I had about 20 minutes of speaking with these wonderful people about um, how I wanted to approach this particular uh, fourth in a series of these talks, as well as some other stuff down the line, what's coming up for next year, what our focus is at the Institute, etc. So I didn't want to bore you on the recording with that part. So I'm going to jump into this, the human dog disconnect. There's human biases, there's dog biases, and that's from what we are, how we are, what we think like, what our senses are, et cetera, et cetera. And those are the past 3 times we've discussed that from October forward. And we've gone over an awful lot of information um, during that time based on certain aspects of the morphology of what we are, our self-understanding, and then how we manipulate the environment based upon what we do. And so how we are, in other words. So um, for those of you who are on the recording only, watching the recording now, um, I wanted to truncate what these descriptions were because, as I explained, the descriptions, if I went into the broad range of details for just the difference of each and every little segment or bullet point that I've got on the outline that you have copies of, that would be, it would take years to go over just what the quote unquote solutions are. And we already do that in aspects in all the other courses that we teach at the Institute and with the Institute. So it's, I didn't want to layer on those elements when they're, frankly, it would take too long. You wouldn't have the experience. You'd have this experience till the next month, and this, and then this, and this, when in the course of a single 9-day class, you can get a lot of this and absorb it, understand it, take it, and work it for the next however long before the next course. So we dive in much deeper in our normal courses that we teach, these pieces and these elements that we go over. So this is picking out these pieces for you to think about how you teach, not just the dog, but what you're teaching to your clients as well, and how you teach it. And that's the whole point of this is, you know, understanding that your approach of how you reach your clients is how you understand their dog, and then how to translate that for the human bias part of it. So that's the main aspect that this focus was for. And I think defining the biases in humans, the comprehensions that we see, the way we think, our senses, etc., versus how dogs are, that provides you with that understanding of that gap, and hopefully allows you to better explain those gaps to your clients as well, or understand them yourself. Okay, if you're not a trainer, and there's several on here, many in the subscription that aren't trainers, and that's fine. So I'm just going to go through and the same list that I've been using from the beginning, which is, first, the morphology. We have to understand who and what we are and who and what dogs are. So the body itself, again, quadrupedal versus bipedal. Okay, and those issues um, cause problems in themselves when we are braced side to side versus front to back like dogs walking along. Um, our abilities to, for instance, a dog moves forward of us, and we talked last time about what heel is about. Heel is about not being pulled off balance initially and being part of the conversation. In other words, having the ability to be understood through through visual connection with the dog. If the dog is forward of you where you are out of its peripheral vision, you're not in the conversation. You are not the dog is completely in charge of what it determines in that situation. So heel is a method of connecting as well as being relevant to that environmental situation, whatever that environment is, indoor, outdoor, other dogs, other people, nothing, objects, doesn't matter what it is. So heel itself or behind puts you in the conversation. And that's one of the reasons that humans use that. The other is we are braced side to side because we're bipedal. So we have a width of balance this way, whereas a dog is lengthwise. So if a dog is next to us lengthwise and it starts to pull, we're braced. We can get its attention back to us because we're braced side to side. If a dog goes forward, we're being pulled off balance. What's probably one of the number one, number two, number three things that clients always complain about. I don't want my dog pulling me. If I got to go on a walk, if I go, and most people won't take their dogs on a walk because why? They get pulled. They feel disrespected. They're out of the conversation. They don't understand why. And so describing all those things, the reason you should teach heel in this case, and the reason it's important is to get dog and human as cooperative partners to understand that. So the now, if the dog's out front, what is the human doing? Looking at the dog. When they pull him to the side, when you're able to get the dog to the side, you got to stop the human from looking at the dog now. Because you're telling the dog either I don't trust you or I don't know what the hell I'm doing, please take over. And so what does the dog do? It takes over in its mind. It has to. It's not a matter of it wants to, it has to. It's all about survival. Every answer to every question anybody has ever asked me, hundreds of trainers, thousands of trainers, sorry, over the years, this dog's doing this or my dog's doing this. What's the answer? Well, the solution is understanding what survival means to that dog. So you go back to the base of survival and say, your dog is doing X because of this, because it sees it this way, not the way you see it. That's the gap. Now, let's set up a set of things that we can work on that, a problem solving. And that's what you should be as a problem solver. And so let's set that up so that we teach the dog be in this situation. Now we're together. You can count on me when you're in this situation rather than you having to go it alone and me being a dead weight at the back of the leash. So that's a massive reason. That's just one of the elements of quadrupedal versus bipedal and the way dogs think. If you're not in the equation, if they can't see you or they're behind you, you've put yourself in a lesser position. So that's one of the main reasons to teach heel. And I hope you are able to explain and understand that to yourself and to your clients, that that's where that comes from, is that cooperative nature. And the reason we did so is because the more we got into a quote unquote civilized or civilization, we couldn't have the dogs going after other dogs, other of neighbors or, you know, citizen dwellers. We couldn't have them go after other people. We couldn't have them go after our neighbors, sheep or things like that. So we had to learn how to manipulate and guide those dogs for a different purpose than going out as hunter-gatherers with thousands of square miles on our own that we could go hunt down a herd together, loose leash and all the way around, off leash, and go travel as a natural pack like predators do. We can't do that in an urban setting, urban being a village or anything larger. So, where did the idea of controlling a dog through a leash or not having it run off come from? It's for those purposes and to get partners in survival. So think about it in those terms to make it make sense for the dog. When you have the dog on leash, it isn't about what you want, it's about the cooperation that you get by you focusing your brain into, this is how we cooperate, this is how we survive better together. You're not on your own, you don't take over. You know, let's cooperate. Let's get an agreement instead of a constant fight and a fuss. One of my old sayings is stop fussing with your dog. Well, how do you do that? By changing your mind. Teach your dog what you know is a better cooperative existence together so that you're not upset. And the dog knows you're upset, but it doesn't know you're upset with it. It just knows you're upset. So now it's looking for the answers out there. What are you upset about? And you start tensing on the leash. So you're providing tension to that brain, going, okay, there's something out there. I got to find it and protect us because this monkey behind me is an idiot. Okay. So that's where that all comes from, guys. So just the body itself, how we're built, how we think, what we look like, all of those aspects, if we recognize our limitations, but we also recognize our strengths, it isn't to use it against the dog, it's to help them see when they're opposed to us, how we can cooperate together. Dogs have other assets that we don't. That's why we cooperated in the first place. So the front to back length, strength versus side to side balance, neck strength of a dog versus our arm strength and what we're up. Dogs down here, center balance down here. Our center balance is up here. Easy to take us off balance unless it's side to side, right? So then learning how to step and move and all of that stuff is very important. And when to recognize when this dog is moving deliberately, unknowingly, sometimes to even the dog, that it moves in a position where it can take us off balance because of the way humans timing of understanding what's going on takes them off balance because they're behind where the dog's mind is. So they're poor at recognizing the dog moving to a position that will take you off balance or gets in a position where the human finally realizes way too late, seconds too late, that the dog is in a different position. They're unaware because they're on their phone or they're talking or they're thinking something else instead of being present in that moment. Being present in that moment is going to help you understand all of this aspect. And now you can use your strengths, your morphology, how you use your legs, how you use your arms, how you use your hands, your strength, your core, rotational spine versus their rotational spine horizontally, all of that stuff. We have to learn to use ourselves, be aware of ourselves and our timing and our difference of understanding of time to be able to be ahead of the dog, even by an eighth of a second. If you're there, that dog is never going to leave you. You're going to be present with it. It's going to be a cooperative partner with you. I can't emphasize that enough. Um, so those are the things that need to be worked on. And the reason I started the Institute in the first place was to teach people about these elements that it wouldn't take you 40 years of working 10,000 dogs before you started to get it. Okay. So that's what we teach is the 40 to 50-year stuff that it would take you that long to even begin to understand that that's part of the equation. So that's the whole idea. Okay. And that's the idea behind these live talks too. Um, Leg length, obviously, dogs being bipedal faster than us, they can run much faster. They can do all sorts of things because, frankly, most of them are very good athletes. Unfortunately, humans have gotten to be where they're not very good athletes in general, and they should be. You should be able to respond in kind to a dog at reaction timing, um, side movement, frontal, back, all those things, able to turn. Dogs are impressed with. Let me put it this way: dogs are impressed with humans that have capabilities, because most humans they run into have zero capabilities physically compared to the dog. The speed, the reaction time, they're way behind. The dog knows instantly when they're working with a human where their level is, just like what we know where that dog is, what that dog is capable of. During an example, during course two, having a dog initially go on top of something that they've never been on before, and they don't have the physical balance or strength, especially they don't know where their hindquarters are, their back paws in proprioception. And by day seven, they're like pro athletes at it because we work things a certain way and a certain timing, and it gives them self-confidence to trust humans because we're the ones asking them to do it. That's huge. That's the cooperative nature of being a partner with that dog to learn how to make it feel better about itself and its situation with you, with a human, because otherwise they're out there alone, literally. So, they understand we use hands. So paw use versus hand use to them, grabbing something is basically a capture and to take down and kill. That's what they're practicing when they're grabbing around your leg or something else or another animal, is to practice that killing aspect of trapping and biting into it. uh, Even if it's in play, they are practicing that. With us, then, how do they interpret us grabbing them? What happens when you grab an unknown dog? They're going to come up at your face, aren't they? So that's their thought. They don't think we're trying to help them. Doesn't matter what your feelings are inside, it's your actions that they're looking at, trying to trap and control them. And trap and control means they're going to die. So you just caused problems. You caused the conflict, and people blame the dog because humans don't understand dogs. That's what this is all about. As far as how we use our joints, legs, arms, etc., versus dogs, different purposes, very similar in nature, but our morphology causes us, because we're upright, they're down on all fours, causes us to use those things differently. And we have abilities that dogs don't, uh, in jumping, running, climbing, etc. We're kind of an all around, whereas they're specialists more. Uh, and I will say this: even at my age, in my 70s, you should still be able to climb a tree. Not very high. Don't do that, because if you fall when you're my age, things break. You end up in a hospital. I don't bounce well anymore, but you should, and dog lifetime, even the lifetime aspect of how our brain and body are made. And I may have said this earlier. Dogs, if you look at the lifetime general average life of a wild canid out there between, African wild dogs, or what they call Cape hunting dogs now. They've had three different names over the years, or dingoes, or wild wolves, or coyotes, or anything else. Average lifetime is 4 to 7 years. For a dog, even though we have kept them around, modified them genetically, etc., for thousands of years, when we look at a lifetime of a dog, it's average of, we'll say, 12 to 15 years. The larger the dog, usually the less time we have with them. Smaller dogs can live longer. That I have an almost 22-year-old Siberian Husky is just kind of an amazing thing. And it's not, I can't claim the credit, it's her. She's just too mean to die. No, I'm kidding. And, but it never made sense from a genetic nature standpoint for them to keep animals alive that long because of the nature of the environment and what they have to do. Uh, for humans, human muscles, especially male muscles, start going to sleep, if you will. They stop growing at about age 40. Why? That was the upper limit of humans living for hundreds of thousands of years. So losing your teeth over time, stuff. I mean, the average age for humans for the first 200,000 years of life cycle was about 20. That was it. Made no sense that you regenerated, muscle growth and stuff like that when you're 70 or 80 years old, which we can now because of, you know, understanding of nutrition and how we can do things. That's fairly recent, but of what we eat. And the same thing for dogs, they're provided nutrition from us. How good that nutrition is or how bad is going to determine the health of that dog and the life cycle of it, factored into its genetics, you know. So those are the things that we've got to look at. And that goes down the line later on in this about uh, stages of age for dogs, which are very truncated. It's like this versus humans to get to an adult point. And so that dog becomes an adult. If you get a puppy when you've got a child that's 3 years old or 5 years old, well, that puppy becomes an adult when that 5-year-old child is 7. It's still a child. So it still has a childlike understanding of the dog, whereas the dog has a full adult understanding of everything else. So when you explain that to your clients, you understand that yourself, you've got to see that that dog is going to take on certain roles as an adult with that child, either protective or against that child. And that's where human adult understanding, the parents in that household have to understand that that is a supervised um, environment that has to happen. Doesn't matter how sweet that dog is, because that dog can become protective against this child's friends coming over. So that has to be adult supervised. So those are some of the factors that we have to understand: the morphology, the age, the way the brain works, all of those things. And then, you know, we've kept dogs much longer in a domestic environment to live longer, but by the time they're 7, 9, the most, they're seniors. Um, and so their needs, the way they behave, their actions, their aches and pains, all of those things uh, can modify their behaviors. They either calm down or they get very crotchety, like me. So with all of my aches and pains, yeah, get off my lawn, punk. So, um, like I say, pain is a good motivator, and it's better to give than receive. That's the way I think about it. So, uh, so a dog may become protective of itself. So we go through, and again, we've gone through heat dissipation methods of body of the morphology and recognizing that you may be sweating and comfortable in an environment, running, but your dog may not have the capability of heat dissipation. You have to look at the morphology, the length of the muzzle, whether or not that dog has capability of dissipating that heat in that humidity that you're asking that dog to be out with you, and vice versa. If you've got a tiny chihuahua with not much body mass and short fur, don't keep it out in 20 below weather, whereas a husky would go out there and lay in it all day and not want to come inside because that's husky summer. So you have to understand the morphology of that particular animal and what you're doing to it. And again, with clients, they may not recognize those different things. It's not that they're stupid, they're just uneducated about that particular subject. That's what we're professionals for. Okay. Um, and the environmental adaptations, food types, obviously, nutrition is massive aspect that I hope people are, I've got that nutrition course online. It's not the end all of everything, but it tells you a lot about things. There are many books out there. There's many people you can follow. You can read books, etc. The more you know, the better off you are, and the more you can transmit that information to your clients. I always gave. There was that origin white paper that was done many years ago, decades ago. It was commissioned by Origin. It was actually a pretty good, just 31-page white paper. Wasn't about Origin or Champion Foods. It was about nutrition of canines and felines. And I always printed it out and gave it to every one of my clients so that they had that information. It was a source they could trust beyond what their vet was trying to say to them. So it was the foot in the door to say, look, we know a lot more about nutrition, or you should, let me put it that way, than these other guys that are paid to, you know, sell something. So, and there's even some well-trained and good, pet food supply places that are, what you'd call pet stores. Some of them are really well versed in it. They get classes in because they carry a number of things, and they can if you can find one of those in your area, that's a good source of information. I was very surprised at a few of them. I used to give some talks at one of them at a feed supply place that they were very interested in it, and I other places would send their people to me. So Hollywood Feed is one of those that used to. I don't know if they still do. It's a chain of them. I'm not sure where they are in the United States, but they're spread around quite a bit in different states. And they used to really have their people go to classes about nutritional aspects. So that's another source for that. So again, capabilities, I talked about speed and timing of humans versus dogs. Again, first thing is being mindful or present with the dog and in that environment and the way they understand what the environment is, the potential threats, exciters, uh, calming aspects of that environment according to the dog, not according to you. If you lose the dog, you've lost the dog because you're not thinking the way dogs think. You are not understanding the environment in that way. Therefore, you're in your own head in human thought. you've already lost the dog. And I guarantee you it will be doing something that you didn't notice because the environment's telling it to do so. So that's one of the reasons why we study so deeply about what is a dog, what are the gaps, how does a dog understand things, and be realistic and honest with who we are as humans. What prejudices we have, what ignorances we have, and we never want to admit those as humans, do we? But we have them. So our speed, strength, capabilities of jumping, all of that stuff. Try husky gets away from you, try to run it down, see what happens. you know uh a month later you'll get a phone call from somebody 5 counties away. Okay. Maybe, or never again. That's not the way you do it. So they have different abilities. um but again, we have an advantage that our legs, regardless of what size you are as a human, your legs are stronger than all four legs of any dog I've ever seen, period. You have to understand balance, control, all of that. You have to be able to use what you've got. And most humans don't bother anymore because we drive every place. So learn to use your legs correctly. Okay. But also understand that dogs are going to use theirs in particular ways to get what they want, not because they're opposed to you, but because you're not relevant for that environment, because you're not part of what the environment is. You're not recognizing it. Okay. I don't mean you, but be honest with yourself too. So, and again, use of defensive mechanisms, tactics and strategies, how dogs move, protect their backside, how we move and our capabilities. Most people, dogs are universally don't expect other dogs to just run to their defense. So they all think they have to defend themselves. Now, if they do have a pack and that pack is called to action, then they have advantages there. At least they've got survival possibilities against larger predators or multiple animals against them. With humans, we once again we have a different concept of what society is, what society accepts, and who and what. Some people will come to the aid of others that are total strangers, even in totally different countries. They just have that call to go take care of it. I'm one of those guys. I'm going to step in regardless. And I know a number of people who are, but I also know a number of people who will be shocked, put their head down, keep walking no matter what, because they don't want to get hurt, because they leave it to others. Dogs don't do that. And so does your client. Most clients, because most people are that way, don't want to get involved. So they don't understand nor wish to study uh, defense, offense, tactics, and strategies of combat. They just don't, because they want to leave it up to someone else, the police, the government, the next door neighbor, the husband, the wife that weight lifts. I don't know, whatever. They want to leave it up to somebody else for their safety. And that's the problem with human thought and culture and society, because now something happens, the dog's taking over, and the dog gets the brunt of all that stuff. And you're standing out there yelling and screaming, which just adds to the cacophony and the energy of the problem. It doesn't solve anything. Matter of fact, it exacerbates it all. So understanding that most humans and most of your clients are going to be that way. When something happens, it's too late. And that's a huge issue that you have to teach them those understandings by giving them some way to handle these situations. It's one of the things that I don't know if I've got one around here that I use trek poles in some courses and teach people. Trek pole is a way to keep others away, a dog attacking or a human, and I teach certain techniques and methods that will work for 99% of the time. Beyond that, you really have to train. That's where people who've studied martial arts understand the aspect of dogs, the way they think. They go to it and they handle it as well as they can. That's an internal confidence of doing and becoming effective to some extent. If you spend, your life doing that, then you become extremely effective. But even if you only do it for a year, you have knowledge you didn't before. So any type of physical exercise that is a conflict negating aspect, I don't care what that exercise is, your capabilities, learning capabilities, is going to assist you in one, understanding dogs, two, being able to take care of situations before they escalate, and three, then have the trust of your dog in you. When a dog gets attacked and a human is standing there yelling behind it as the dog gets mauled, you think that dog has any confidence in that human to do anything? There's no trust in that human, which is why the dog doesn't want to go back out on the walk again with that human, because the human couldn't handle it. So why would the dog go out again? So, um, so there's aspects like that. Okay. Like I said, we can't go over every tiny little thing here. It'd take years of this. Um, and I'm going to try to limit myself. I've got about 25 minutes left, so I got to move on. So defensive mechanisms, we've got to understand how dogs work versus how humans. The brain itself, the capabilities of a dog brain, how they see things, how they understand. Um, Obviously, there's breed differences. A Chihuahua and a Rottweiler are not going to, they're going to have the same mentality, but they're not going to have the same capabilities. And because humans are generally about the same size, other than tiny humans like, children, um, most adults are within a general range. And so the proportion of a human versus a Chihuahua versus a human against a Rottweiler, those are massively different in proportions and strengths. And so humans aren't necessarily afraid of the Chihuahua, but they're afraid of the Rottweiler. Well, that changes your intent, your mind, and your capabilities on yourself, plus the dogs know it. So, also working with those animals, it's an entirely different uh, situation, and it shouldn't be because the dog's mind is the same. They think the same way. Their tactics may be different because of their size and their capabilities, but that's all. So when you deal with any dog, your mind should be in the same way to understand, study, get cooperation, and communicate correctly to that dog to where it has comprehension of you. When you present yourself a certain way, the dog already knows you and they go, okay, I can trust this guy. May not, I may not like him, but I can trust what he is. When you change what you are, you're a chameleon. Now the dog doesn't trust, he doesn't understand. And that's where all the human emotions come involved. So human emotions are layered on top of all that. That's our brain. And that's what causes huge gaps in understanding because dogs don't have those upper emotions. Yes, they have base emotions of fear and all those other things, but not the future expectations of things that haven't ever occurred, which is what humans are great at. I I am being sarcastic about being great. So um, so I tried to. So uh, there's I tried to find there's no simple formula for permutations of 8.4 billion versus 86 billion possible combinations of neurons. I found that single this neuron to that neuron, I found a formula just for that, just pairings. So the possibility of pairing in a dog's brain is about 30 to 35 billion possible one-to-one pairings. That's all it is. But now you add in the third pairing and the fourth and the fifth and all these different. I didn't have enough time to calculate all that out. Let me put it that way. So it's, I have no idea, you know, Google's amount of possibilities of understanding of combinations of neurons that can fire to mean something within the brain for 8.4 billion neurons. The possibilities are, I probably couldn't even write out the number of zeros behind whatever that number is uh, during this whole class here. So are they intelligent? Yes. And intelligence has been described not as the size of the brain, but the mass of the brain versus the mass of the body, because the brain has to take care of all these. If a massive body is there, there's a number of neurons that are focused on information from and to and taking care of systems for all of those cells back in the body. So it's the percentage wise, if you will, of mass of brain versus body size. It's that proportion. And dogs are highly intelligent because of that mass difference. Okay. Um, so yeah, they're extremely intelligent. Their capabilities, their senses, how they think is similar but different from ours because they have the same neuroplasticity, neurotransmitters, and hormones that we do. We're both mammals. We both came from proto-mammals from 220 million years ago. All these specializations of mammalians, our brains are very similar in structure and our genetics are very close. So, of course, we have the capability of living together because we do understand each other, at least on a cursory level. Our goal is to understand them more and be more effective and understanding how to problem solve. So, their perception of environment versus ours is different because their brains are layered and structured differently than ours for their main systems, which is nose, mouth. Ours is eye, hand. And if you understand, if you can hang on to that whenever you're working with a dog and whenever you're explaining things to other humans about their dog or yours, that we're eye hand dominant. That's how our brain resolves the universe. They are nose, mouth subdominant. So nose is everything to them. It's why they have to sniff. They use their eyes, yes, but it's only to corroborate things. If you notice, you've probably seen on social media sites about a dog being reunified with their owner a year later, or a month, or 3 years, or whatever else. Dog is, person comes in, the dog barks at them and kind of does this, and then goes up to them, and when they sniff them, then they get all excited and happy. We recognize a human from 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago by our sight. We go at distance. Dog has to smell you to know you. And if that's not a perfect example of things, then the differences between us, I don't know what is. Understanding lower brain, the limbic and autonomic systems versus the upper brain of developmental cognitive power, our prefrontal cortex, their olfactory bulb, massive part of their brain, a quarter of their brain is for scent. A tiny part of our brain is for scent. So scent is an afterthought for us. Um, Concepts of time, what social means in survival for dogs is in small group units, small groups. They can't accept large groups. They just can't. They can learn to accept it in massive areas if the human can help guide that dog, if they feel comfortable with that human, or they learn to not be tense in those situations by repeating those things. So it's a learned aspect when you work with a dog and the dog goes with you, whether it's the client or you, in different places, it learns how to be there. So we're guiding that dog by our behavior, but you're also learning about that dog. And there's no better way to take yourself, I'm not proselytizing here, to take yourself out of your normal time and go through, for instance, course 2, where you and that dog are put in a different environment and you have to learn to come together. You're both learning about each other and about the new situation at the same time. So it puts you in a situation where you literally have to bond with that dog from your standpoint, and the dog has to bond with you to survive. And that's the whole point, of course, too, is teach you about the survival and how you both are able to come together. So I knew of no better way to do that than to create that 9-day course years ago. And seems to have been pretty effective at doing that. Um, and then the different drives, survival drive, it all goes back to survival, guys. If you understand that everything you do is how you think you survive best, everything you do, clothes you wear, the words you say, your friends, where you live, what you do, how you negotiate with things daily, what car you drive where. It's all about survival. Everything goes back to that. And so um, dogs see it the same way for them, for what they need for survival. And again, our survival is we plan 50 years ahead. They don't have 50 years. They don't have to plan that far ahead. So the way to make a dog calm, comfortable within its own skin is to show it that everything is stable. I'm stable. I've got this. Okay. That's your clients need to take on that. And they can then understand when you create chaos by moving and someone else comes into your household and lives there or goes away, that's instability in a dog. And if it doesn't have stability for at least a year, because that's about how far they can plan ahead. If it doesn't have stability within a year, then it's unstable, it's uncertain about its future until that year of stability happens. That's an important element. I mean, you have the 3-day, 3-week, 3-month thing, but dogs can, dogs, wolves, canids, can plan a year ahead. They could understand that. It's not that they're going, well, let's see, 365 days from now, I want to be here doing this. That's not what I mean. It's the aspect of understanding that there are future events. And if they can't count on future events because of what's just happened within the past year, then you have to provide that stability in the best ways that you possibly can. Okay. Understanding um, social responses, acceptance, morality itself. That's trust through patterning, both human and dog. You don't trust a dog that's unstable and doesn't create understandable patterns for you. May be understandable to the dog because it's reactive, quote unquote. Well, it's reacting to the environment because it can't trust. That's the main reason. So if you can help provide and guide a dog into an environment that it has to live within and understand that and work within that environment for that dog, then you've got that trust through pattern learning. Because that's all the brain is. It's pattern seeking. Brain is a pattern seeking part of our genetics. And then understanding pro-social versus what humans do, which is a herd mentality. So pro-sociality within a small pack is a lot easier to do. When we create teams or corporations or small groups, we can work together very well, and we gain that pro-social aspect. When you're talking about a herd, a whole nation of people together, 330 million people, and we need to think this way so that we stay together. There's all sorts of conflict there. But so when you stand out, you get crushed or excoriated or eliminated um, out of that. So it doesn't become a pro-social aspect. It becomes a herd mentality of survival. And we're more, frankly, most people are more prey oriented than predatorial oriented. That's why we have this issue of we're friendly with everybody that we can be friendly with because we're herd mentality. We want to be liked. We want to be accepted within the herd. Dogs don't care. That dog next door, I'm going to kill it because it keeps coming to the fence, coming to our territory. Whereas we're apologizing to the neighbors, each other, for the way our dogs act. They're acting out in their morality, guys. Okay. So different way to approach things. How do you solve that equation? Well, okay, if you're really concerned about it, get together with your neighbor if they allow it, and figure out how to walk the dogs together, et cetera, et cetera. Don't push them into, just get them into acceptance. Geez, at least. And don't send your dog out there in the backyard by itself. Get off your butt, go out in the backyard and be part of its pack. Okay. You got two legs, use them. Um, and then the way social isolation goes, social isolation for a dog is severe. In other words, it's by itself. Social isolation with us may be a group out of an entire herd. We're still part of a group. So it's we self-isolate, whereas dogs don't do that as much unless they've just not unless they've never been socialized correctly. Socialization isn't going to a dog park. And then the territorial boundaries and how they understand them versus how we understand them. Your property, everybody understands that's your property. The dog doesn't know that. That's its territory and it must protect it and its extraterritorial jurisdiction. So that gap there, that understanding, the reason your clients get upset when their dog does something or the dog next door is because they understand territory in a different way. That dog's going to come over and kill us and take our territory. Well, humans don't think that way. A few do, but they're usually in prison in a very short amount of time. So, okay, dogs don't have prisons. Um, And then the senses, direct, the eyes, ears, nose, feel. We went over that, the differences between humans and dogs and how we see that. We need to be aware of their senses, and we need to make our clients aware of the dog senses and how they encounter and corroborate what they experience. Okay. Uh, the way that our brains stitch together complexities of learning and how we come up with our values and intents. Dogs, in many ways, dogs are simpler in their outcome. They're more pure. Ours is more calculating. We calculate for future events because we live long lives. Dogs don't have to worry about that. We've got to live next to our neighbors for 20 years. The dogs don't. Okay. So it's an entirely different way of thinking, and that's where those gaps and those biases cause problems for you and for your clients. Developmental timing, we talked about that. Ages, a dog can live its entire life while a child is still a child. Or when you're an older adult and you see you got a puppy and it's gone in 12 years and you're still living as an adult in the same stage of life. So those are different aspects that cause comprehension issues in humans of how things go, what's fair, what's not, all of that stuff. It's coming to terms with those and helping your clients coming to terms with that's the bargain you got into when you got a dog, or 10 or 18 or whatever you have. Some of us have had a few more over the years. Don't know who that would be for me. Averaging 12 in my house at any one time. So differences of perspective in age, also a childlike thing, a puppy-like thing versus an adult or an adolescent. There's different purposes in puppies, dogs at those stages than there are humans. And those lives, developing lives, have less of a connection other than a a play type aspect or an affection type aspect. There's less, there's more richness, and there's less richness at younger ages at the same time because there's not that maturity of consequence yet. And the consequence for both dogs and humans as adults is a comprehension that we must be partners, not because of emotion, but because of survival. And so that's where it goes because of consequence, the understanding of consequence. So um, that's what we've got to work on, whether our clients are, I've had clients in the past that were 18, 19, 20 years old. They got a dog. They don't have prefrontal cortex total development yet. So they don't have the understanding the consequences of getting that dog and how long it has to be part of their life. It'll be there for more than a third of their lives, of that human life with them. They don't have that concept yet. So working with a 20-year-old that just got a dog is much different than a 40-year-old that just got the dog. And the success of that. So you got to think about those things, guys. How am I going to reach this human, and how am I going to get them to understand the commitment that they've made, the obligation that they owe to that animal? Okay. And the emotions, the base versus learned developmental emotions. We talked about that a little bit. And then self-understanding. We have to point out to our clients a lot of things about themselves. And the way I do it is use a little levity and always include myself in as us idiot human primates, although I'm really talking about them. No, I'm kidding. uh, but including yourself as an example is a good way to not have them defensive, because they have to own it. They have to understand it, and they have to realize, yeah, but they can't make an excuse of, well, that's just us. They can't make that excuse or they'll never change. So, and then the way humans manipulate the environments, in, Homo sapien development, we try to control everything, everything. And the dogs are only trying to keep a status quo to survive. If things change, it's a potential threat, but it's also an opportunity. They're looking for opportunity. We do it too, but we do it long term. They do it in the moment. Okay. And that's the difference between us, is we're looking at long term, how other humans are going to look at us 20, 30 years down the line. The dog is looking to survive in that moment. So no use in getting upset at the dog. It's doing what it must. So that's where human involvement, direction, and understanding is going to help. Okay. Oh, I could go on forever about all of that. So 3 minutes. Okay. So I'll wrap this up. Basically, we're trying to create a situation where our clients, yourselves, to understand we're humans. We have biases. These are canids. They know things that we don't. So we both match up together. If we blend that, if we try to crush that dog and make it into what we want, we're denying what that dog has to offer us beyond affection, beyond you know, our lap buddy. You're missing all the enrichment and your clients are missing the enrichment of what having that animal in your life is about. So it's that connection that we're trying to get. The only way you can get a deep connection is with a mature understanding of each other, a cooperation rather than conflict. And the way you get conflict is you ignore what the other is and don't care. So it's about learning everything you possibly can about that other side of things that helps you, frankly, understand nature itself. Because if you understand yourself, if you truly are honest with yourself, and you understand this aspect about nature, you've doubled what you're capable of, because you've changed your perspective. So you have all that body of knowledge you've had your entire life out here, and you've changed your perspective, and you get to look at all of this knowledge from a different perspective. You've doubled everything. So that's really what this is about. And that's frankly, that's what all the courses are about. Um, so I hope that helps. I saw a few things down at the bottom of the screen coming across. Did anybody have something that I need to address right now, Angela? Put your eyeballs on. I've got mine on. Oh, can't see anything.
Okay, here we go. Tall dogs versus small dogs. Are there differences in the human body language and how to communicate with those dogs?
Very
For
much so.
example, the angle of the view, range the dog has, but also with small dogs, footwork is more important than maybe with the tall dog. How are hand signals
Hmm.
given differently to a small dog versus a large dog? Oh, I
Oh,
can
wow.
answer that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You lay down and then you give the hint.
Yeah.
No, no. That's a whole class on its own, frankly. Uh,
Feet do help with the small dogs. I mean,
yeah,
you have to bend over and create that line of communication
yeah,
initially, especially if it's a new dog you're working with, right?
Yes.
But then, because I had a small dog, a little Maltese thing, and yeah, I ended. I well, and I also realized by just observing the dog that it was paying attention to my feet. So it would really watch the angle of which direction I was going, or even if I was, starting to move. And once I realized that, I also used a warning order at the same time, just to,
Yep.
which I was already doing
Snap
with
those
the hand
fingers. Yep.
signals, with the hand signals, right? So when I started
Yep.
doing it with the feet and using the warning order that I had been using as well, it came together quite nicely, and the dog was like, "Oh, thank you very much,"
Yeah.
and we moved together quite beautifully, which was nice.
Yeah. What I usually do with a small dog is I'm going to get its attention upwards to the hands. I'll use a snap of a finger, a cluck in my mouth, or something like that to get their attention initially to look at least up instead of just focusing down here on the feet. When we're bowling the same direction, obviously. I want them to look up, but I don't want them to have to look up at my face because now you're a 20,000 foot tall monster instead of hands sort of out here and in front of you. It's not a threat, it's guiding you. So that initial um, contact is with a sound. The dog looks up, there's a hand, and it moves, and then we do that. And dogs, especially little dogs, are very sensitive to not just the foot angle itself, this versus that, but also if you change speed, even of that in that pace, they are so sensitive to that speed change. What is a speed change? It's a transition. Even in within that one step, you start to slow down as you step. That dog is already going to be on alert. Something's changing. What am I looking for? It's a transition. That's a potential threat. So working with little dogs, first of all, they're little, we're huge. Second of all, getting literally on their level, both the way they think as well as being able to get in their peripheral vision with your hand um, is super important. Super important. Being on their level, so to speak, means you're communicating to them and making that effort to do so. And they respond just as well as any other dog of any size. And when they recognize you're trying to communicate and efforts, and they will make that effort to try to communicate back. And that's the beautiful thing. I hope I answered that between the two of us. So, anything else? Okay.
One more thing. Uh, Tiffany asked if there's going to be future opportunities where the 9 day with a dog, which is our RBBM2 class, would be offered anywhere else besides Blue Ridge, Texas.
Not next year, probably not the next year either. It's that's a tough one because there has to be certain things in place, certain environments, types of opportunities for all of the things that we experience within course two. And that's, eating, staying someplace, we eat together, we go with the dogs, we do all these things. And those same types of opportunities have to be there. It's not going to be at a guest location ever. Can't be. Just can't. It's too complex of a thing to do. So for now, sorry, uh, for now, it's always going to be at the center for the next few years. And don't forget, I'm in my 70s. I'm not going to do this forever. So don't wait for 10 years because I probably won't be around doing that at that point, guys. So don't wait too long. That's not a threat. It's a reality.
Well, there's something to be said for, I mean, I've done the class, I've assisted with the class 4 times. There's something to be said for coming to this incredible environment. We call it island time. when you come and
Yeah.
learn at the center, because you get away from everything else in your life, in your world, and your complete focus is on yourself and that amazing creature that you're working with for those 9 days. So it's not that we couldn't do it somewhere else, but as you were stating a moment ago, everything, we know the routine and everything that we can offer up in that environment, and it's beautiful there. It's island time in the middle of Texas. So,
Yeah. Yeah. We even have a beach.
well, that's what you call
Well,
it.
yeah. Yeah. Sunny beach.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Ah,
All right,
so
guys. Well, okay. We've gone long, but that's okay. It was worth it. So, at least I hope it was for you guys.
yeah.
All right. Well, thank you guys. Appreciate you. We'll hit it next year. I'm kind of reorienting what the topics are for next year. So I don't have what January 15th live is going to be yet. I really have to think it over and get things in a logical sequence. And we've done 2 years now, 24 of these things plus Q and A's. I think our next Q and A coming up for all of the previous ones is, when is that? It's March 29th. So we've got January 15th, February 12th, March 5th, and then March 29th is the Q and A. So those are the next 3 months. And oh no, I'm sorry. I take that back.
Apologies. I'm trying to get to it, but I've got like so much stuff open up on
No,
my
I
computer.
apologize. No, that would be too long. I was thinking, wait, we haven't had a Q and A in a long time. Our live Q and A is January 4th.
Fourth. Yes.
Saturday, January 4th, we're going to do it about 2 a.m. 2 a.m. 2 p.m.
I
Now,
knew.
yeah, Rachel will be happy with that. We finally have to get up at 2 a.m. No, uh, um, 2 p.m. Central Time. That's our Q&A on Saturday, January 4th. If anybody's interested in questions and answers for anything we've done in the past, okay, hopefully focused on the past uh, few months. So, okay.
Wonderful.
All right, guys. Uh, yeah, thanks, Rachel. All righty. Well, thank you guys for sticking it out. Appreciate you always. And we will see you, if not next time, hopefully sooner. And don't wait, come to class. Bye,
Thank
guys.
you. Thank you.